All right, well, welcome everyone. This is our second forum of the first part of the election cycle. And the way we're going to lay out what we're going to do tonight. We have our esteemed panelists who we'll introduce in a minute. We're going to do representatives for U.S. Congress first, and then we will do the judges' races, and then we will do the individual school board races, starting at the District 5, which is the Key Largo area. Then we'll move down to the Marathon area, and then finish up with Key West. We've got plenty of time tonight, so we want to try to get in depth with the candidates, really learn about them and find out what differentiates them from each other. With that, let me introduce the panelists. I'll let them do it themselves. Mr. Becker, you want to tell us about yourself, who you are?
Yeah, I'm the Reverend Randy Becker. I'm minister to One Island Family Congregation here at Key West.
Naja, Girard. I'm the publisher and editor of Key West, the newspaper, along with my husband, and I'm also currently the president of the Environmental Good Glass Stand.
I'm Jenna Stauffer. I work for Channel 19. I host a show called Good Morning Florida Keys.
Bill Becker, news director at US 1 Radio and producer and host of US 1 Radio's Morning Magazine.
Bill, while you've got the microphone, will you tell us what's going on next Tuesday?
Tuesday night, election night, as soon as elections close, the polls close, 7 o'clock, we'll begin our broadcast live from the Harvey Government Center. It will be on Comcast Channel 76, the Monroe County channel, and we will also be simulcasting on 104.1 US 1 Radio and online at us1radio.com. So we invite all the candidates to come on out starting 7 o'clock. We'll put you on the air, win or lose, and we'll be there till all the results are in. So tune in 7 o'clock next Tuesday night, election night.
Thank you, Bill. And speaking of simulcasting, we once again are flawlessly simulcasting through FloridaKeys.com. I would appreciate if anybody's out there in the nethersphere, please email or text me that things are good or bad or whatever. We're also recording it with audio, with brand new firmware and equipment, Janelica promises me. So in the next day or two, our recording of this will be up on our website, hometownkey.com, again hosted by FloridaKeys.com. So let's get right into it. These are our candidates for U.S. House of Representatives. We have Mr. Edward McDougall.
Thank you.
I'm going to cheat a little and say that we have Larry Starbuck. And as we've been having good luck with in the past, instead of doing open statements, we're just going to get right into it with the panelists and their questions, because we find that instead of retracing a lot of these paths, we'll just get to the questions, and the candidates will get a closing statement. We're also, as we always evolve with these events, we're going to try to keep the answers fairly concise, maybe a minute and a half. And then, but we are also encouraging the candidate's opponent to, if they feel the need for it, to rebut or to respond. And so it's not just the last word, the initial person that got the question, if they feel so, if they desire, they can respond to that. We also encourage our panelists, not that it's ever happened before, but if a candidate completely evades a question or goes off on a tangent, the panelists are encouraged to bring them back to the original question and find out where we are. Again, we have some nice time tonight. We have a very cozy venue, so sit back and we'll get going. Why don't we start off, Bill?
Yep. Question to Mr. McDougall. How do you feel about
Make sure I'm on here.
How do you feel about same-sex marriage?
Well, I made it very clear in my interview with the log cabin Republicans that the United States is a place of liberty, and that we have in our Declaration of Independence very clear that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. I believe that if you look back in the history of our country, we freed the slaves. We have allowed women to vote less than 100 years ago, and I think it's time to allow individual liberties to all. I have spoken very clearly on this issue, and I think that we need to allow this.
The issue is capacity to legislate. Marriage is got connotations for thousands and thousands of years of religious belief. It is a sacred sacrament for people that follow religion. And one issue that has served us well constitutionally is the separation of church and state. Marriage between the same sex is going to happen in the United States because we're moving to that. We have judges here in Monroe County have already determined that the same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. We have judges in Dade County or Miami-Dade County that rule the same thing. And eventually, it's going to be to where if you want to marry, you go to your preacher. If you want to have a civil union, you go to the clerk of the court. That is how we constitutionally, as a constitutional attorney, believe that that's the future of civil unions in the United States. And as far as me marrying somebody of my own sex, of course not, I would not do it, but I respect everybody who feels that they want to do it because we are free under the Constitution of the United States, and we should defend that right for those people that feel that way.
So if legislation came before Congress and you were in Congress, you would vote in favor of same-sex marriage?
Absolutely. Constitutionally, the First Amendment, the right to associate, it's one of the first, it's in our First Amendment. So obviously, yes, absolutely.
In the U.S., 1 in 4 children live in families that are below the federal poverty line. Here in Monroe County, 50% of our children are eligible for free and reduced lunches at school. Do you feel an obligation to them, and if so, what is it?
An obligation for free or reduced lunches?
Live in families below the poverty line.
I think I understand the question, but I want to make sure I give you an accurate answer. The question is about...
The question is, in the U.S., 1 in 4 children live in families that are below the federal poverty line. Do you feel an obligation to them, and if so, what is it?
Well, absolutely. You know, one of the things about... I'm a Republican, and I know there are Democrats and Republicans here. People think Republicans, for some reason, they want to portray us as living under a bridge and trolls that don't care about people. And of course we care about people. We care about children, we care about older people, and people that are in need of help. And those children that need help to join our society because they don't have enough to eat or their homes are in such a state that it doesn't allow them a proper education because they can't get to school in time and they need the help. Absolutely. But I will tell you, I am not in favor of assisting adults that are able-bodied. It's one of the problems that we call entitlements in this country. And I think you are separating these issues, I hope you are, because children are not in that equation, and children certainly do deserve our care and help. That answers your question.
Under the law, we have to take care of those children, okay? We have equal opportunity, equal protection under the law, and of course, throughout the United States, a rule that we have to take care of, whether or not they're here legally or illegally, whether they fall at the poverty line. Obviously, our system of government has a ladder for you to climb as high as you want to climb, and net to catch you when you fall. But that fall has to be temporary. So we have to work on getting these people up to the level, away from poverty level, not keep them in that poverty level and by feeding them and just letting them stay there. We have to go beyond feeding them and providing an education so that they can move forward and climb the ladder of life.
Key West is a Navy town. A few years ago, entitled to over 900 units of housing for military personnel and their families situated on some of the largest pieces of federally owned land waterfront property in the Keys was turned over to an LLC that is run by a British-owned mega corporation. Much of the housing is also rented to retired military, federal employees, and even non-affiliated civilians. And there's been an enormous amount of controversy over the private company's refusal to pay local property taxes, including school taxes, on those units. And the issue is still up in the air. Representative Joe Garcia has strongly supported equal local taxation of these housing units. Where would you stand on this issue?
Well, I'm the only candidate who served in the military in terms of combat tours of Vietnam. Former Special Forces, part of my soul is military, and I believe that we need to make sure that we take care of our military personnel, men and women, and families. What I'm hearing from you is retired military are living in these units and they're not paying taxes. Is that what you said, or they have a special tax reduction?
The owner of the corporation that holds title to the units is fighting having to pay property taxes for any of the units.
No, it doesn't work that way. No, absolutely. The owner absolutely should be paying taxes. If that was a long way around saying, does a private corporation get away without paying taxes because they're serving the military? The answer is absolutely no.
The minute you take federal property and you put it in title into private property, it becomes no different than everybody's home that we own here in the Keys. So you are subject to Monroe taxes, you are subject to Florida taxes, and the ad valorem taxes, and all the other taxes that come along, including school board. So I don't see how the litigation go forward whereby these people, absent of being a tax-exempt 501c3 corporation, be exempt from taxation.
Just a quick follow-up. One component of this is that this is actually, there's a public-private venture, and so the Navy actually has some stake in the private company. How does that change your answer?
Well, it does change it. It actually changes quite a bit because the county generally is the one who assesses the taxes, but if the military is involved and they have some ownership, and when you say some interest, that means ownership, I assume. In the military has some ownership in the company. Well, you give me some sketchy information, it's pretty tough to give you a definitive answer. I certainly take a look at it. I happen to be in that business, and I'm a title and escrow, real estate, property casualty, so to give you an answer would be tough without knowing some of the facts. But before I do, I'd like to say this. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I didn't have a chance to do an introduction. I hope at some point I will, because there's a couple of things I'd like to say. I'm sorry I can't give you a definitive answer. One of the problems you have with politicians is they'll give you an answer, tell you what you want to hear, and not know the facts.
Sometimes I go over time.
The issue complicates itself with having the Navy as part of the order. Okay? If in fact it is a joint venture or an international treaty type of venture, then you have complications with IRS and tax exemptions, and that's what my question went to, whether they are 501c3 or not. But who holds title controls whether or not they're indeed taxable entity or the United States government is participating. So it is a legal question. I would love to answer it here publicly, but I don't have enough facts to give you a legal opinion on it. But I am capable of giving you a legal opinion. I'm the only candidate in this race that's a constitutional attorney, and I'm the only one ascribed to a code of ethics. So that is law. Thank you.
Randy, and this is going to go to Larry first.
In Bill Becker's question, we began to get into the issue of some of the stands of the Republican Party. The National Republican Platform has a number of planks in it, one of which was that they were saying marriage was only between one man and one woman. Some other ones include the absolute protection of the Electoral College, limitations on voting days and times and absolute identification, and also the redefinition of money and donations as forms of free speech. One of my concerns is that people often say one thing during an election, but when they get to Congress, they're told to vote according to the party platform. On those issues, the whole issue of toughening up voter registration times, laws, and voting times, the Electoral College, and money is speech, where do you stand, and are you willing to stand over and against the party?
I will stand against the party every time I believe I am right with respect to the manner in which I believe, constitutionally speaking, we have to proceed. I believe the Constitution is the law of the land. It is the highest law, and we seem to forget about it every day and twice on Sunday right now. So I'm the only one capable of defending the Constitution in Congress, and I will do so when you elect me to that chair. But what you said, it's a compound question. It has 4 or 5 elements. And I presume you're talking about the proposed 29th Amendment. which has electoral colleges, and I am a proponent. I have to tell you, I don't have a problem with doing away with electoral college and dividing the electoral college by regions. We have 27 regions in Florida, and I would give each one an electoral vote. I don't believe that if you win by 1 or 2% of the popular vote of a state, you should gain all the electoral votes for that particular party or candidate. So I really believe that each electoral vote should go by district. Whoever wins the district wins the electoral vote. However, in the national elections, it's another game. I'm also very much concerned. There's been a number of presidential elections that have gone popular vote one way and electoral vote the other way. So I would definitely consider that. Other than my time's up. No.
I couldn't be happier that you asked that question, and the answer is that, I know if this is my opponent, but I'm a lawyer, and I know they're the only ones that defend the Constitution, but I physically defend the Constitution. So, we shed blood for the Constitution, but when I stand with the party, the reality is the party does not elect your leaders. That's the problem in the country today. You elect your leaders. Today, the party is trying to elect the leadership across this nation. My father was a die-hard Union Democrat. My mother was a very tough Republican with 5 children 7 years apart. We learned about politics. We learned about government. So I'm very flexible when it comes to those things, but I will stand by the Constitution. I have a graduate workers' constitutional law. He was reminding me I can't be a constitutionalist, and that's okay. But in terms of elections belong to the states. The states make these decisions based on, you have California that have races that are completely different than ours. And I won't have enough time to get into it, but I believe that currently the way it stands with the Electoral College, it's okay. There are many ways that it can be confused when you have some of these elections. I'm running on time now, but it's in my heart that states under our Constitution have a right to set up their election process. Thank you.
I want to just push one other thing I mentioned. The issue of money as free speech, the equivalent of speech.
A quick answer from both of you. Larry, go first.
I think Mr. McDougal and I know a little bit about using money for free speech. We're in a race, and unfortunately, people put their money wherever they want, and money is private property. And to that extent, it should be assigned to free speech. The problem that we have is when we have this influence peddling that's happening every day in Washington. So with respect to political contributions, I am very much in favor of controlling them. And the PACs have been one form that we circumvented those ways to raise money. I don't think that this race that we're involved in, it's a race that money's going to dictate. I think.
Finish your thought there.
Okay.
I respect the United States Supreme Court's decision. I'll defend their right, and I'll die for their right, and I'll die for anybody's right to have free speech, but I disagree with it now, most specifically. Big corporations, unfortunately, this is coming from a Republican who built a company, a big company, from nothing, and I believe in the work ethic. But what has happened today in this country is that many large corporations are buying their way into our politics. It's your country, it's your government, and it belongs to you. And when it is corrupted with money, this is really a very bad thing. I hope that answers your question.
Mr. Starr, will you vote to normalize relations with Cuba, lift the embargo, allow free travel?
I have written 3 articles that have been published by the Miami Herald, the Cuban American Bar, and the Florida Bar regarding the Cuban embargo. I was endorsed by Dan Burton, who wrote the Helms-Burton Act, which is the Cuban Democracy Act. I support the embargo. In fact, it works. 3 months ago, the United States obtained $9.2 billion in forfeiture and fines against a French bank who was violating the embargo. Today, I have sitting in my office evidence of continued trade and violation by United States banks dealing with Cuban petrol. Right now, Cuba gets all the petrol for free from Venezuela. They've exported their communism throughout Latin America. Venezuela is one of them. They have all the fuel that they can buy or obtain from Venezuela for free. And they're selling it. And in this particular transaction, one of our major banks financed this transaction to Honduras through a company in Fort Lauderdale. So yes, I support the embargo. I believe that it should be, it hasn't worked the way it was intended to work, but at least with respect to Section 301, which is the financial section, is working very well. And I will not normalize relations with Cuba so long as the dictatorship and the Castro cartel is there.
So you would call yourself a hardliner?
No, I call myself an individual that follows the law. Okay, I'm a constitutional attorney, and this is a country of laws where the right of property and the right of United States citizens that love property in Cuba have a right to recuperate. And as long as that's our public policy, that's where I will follow. And in Congress, I will defend the Helms-Burton Act. Yes, I've written articles on it and published articles about it. Yes.
Thank you.
Same question.
I will do it speak last. I've on 14,000 doors, including thousands in Monroe County, and I've spoken with them across this district. I've spoken with the Cuban Americans, I've spoken with Mexican Americans, Anglos, and what they tell me they want is what I will believe in, because I believe that's the way it's supposed to be. And here's what I hear, and this is from Cuban Americans as well: do away with the Cuban Adjustment Act. It's the wet foot, dry foot policy. It's bad. It needs to be done away with it. It's not working. It's broken. I believe that the embargo is not working either. I would not completely do away with it, but I can tell you, like many of you in this room, I lived through the missile crisis. They were pointing missiles at us. The Castros are our enemy. Make no mistake about it. They will kill us. That regime, that communist regime, I fought them. They've been fought in Korea. They are our enemy. Communists are not our friends. At the end of the day, we need to change the system under which we are now operating. I would isolate those people in the government, make sure that the embargo goes against them, but the people of Cuba, they can't even take their country back. Why? Because they have nothing. And I think this embargo is part of the problem. So it needs some extensive study and not just left it the way it's been for 50 years. Thank you.
Mr. McDougall addressed the Cuban Adjustment Act. I understood the question was regarding the Democracy Act, the embargo. So with respect to the Cuban Adjustment Act, clearly I'm supporting an adjustment to that law because I believe that while it was a gift to the Cuban community that went to fight in Cuba in Bay of Pigs, it is outdated, and every Cuban that lands on this land should at least have a day in court and prove their asylum hearing before an administrative immigration judge.
We're about out of time. Does anyone have a quick question? I don't think there's, I'm skeptical if there is something. Let's use the...
I can tell this guy.
I need a 30-second answer because I want to give you guys a little time to do a closing statement.
Thank you.
All right.
Said it was easy.
Okay. There's something called the Clean Cruise Ship Act. Have you heard of that, and would you be in favor of it?
Clean Cruise Ship Act? Absolutely. Listen, just was a few years ago where cruise ships were, if this is what you're referring to, is just dumping garbage into our ocean. Is that what you're referring to? I mean, that law was passed. This is a furtherance of making sure that these cruise ships are environmentally sound. One of the things people don't know about me, I am a Republican, but I'm also an environmentalist. I started the only environmental corridor with 7 cities, 500,000 people, without 10 cents of tax money, and 35 elected officials came on board. My home, 3,800 square foot, I have some months where I pay no power bill. So we need to move forward. And I'd like to speak a little bit about the environment in Monroe County.
That's 30 seconds.
We'll get back to that.
Of course we support environmentally safe ships, but the problem is you're talking about a law that once they go out 3 miles, we really cannot enforce, even though we have a 12-mile zone. So as far as environmental, I did their environmental removal here in Truman Annex when the Navy closed Truman Annex. I was the company, I headed Envirotech contractors who did the work. And I understand It's another law that could not be enforced against these ships if they dump outside our mileage. So I apologize, but it is what it is.
Thanks, guys. So this went pretty quick. We're going to do, it's be really tough. I'd love to have a minute and a half, 2 minutes. You guys want 5. So 2-minute closing statement. Larry, you go first.
This election, ladies and gentlemen, is about capacity to legislate. Who has the capacity to legislate? I am a constitutional attorney, and I understand clearly that every time you pass a law, you take somebody else's right away. And that's why we have Obamacare, Dodd-Frank, and Common Core that we're now facing and we have to deal with. The problem is we are electing politicians, recycled politicians to govern. And the Congress, believe it or not, is the House of Laws. If you don't understand the law, you cannot or should not be elected to Congress, because when you draft a legislation, you have to know not only the direct consequences of the law, but the unintended consequences that go around each and every piece of legislation that you have when you move forward. So, you know, when we passed Obamacare, granted, no Republicans voted, but it did pass, and it is law. And now it has tremendous side effects on our ability to have small businesses. It's going to die sooner or later because I believe it's unconstitutional in more ways than one, but more importantly, Obamacare will die on its own face because it's a pyramid scheme that is not working and economically unfeasible. But nonetheless, we have to carry it. We still have to carry it for us. So this election, vote your heart, understanding that we cannot continue to send recycled politicians to Congress. We need to send somebody that is versed with the law and understands that passing a law takes away somebody else's right. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. One quick thing. I obviously don't have to remind everybody we don't do boos or hissing or anything like that. Not that anybody would. Laws are fine.
That would be
You
good.
can boo me. That's fine.
You're in big trouble.
All right, Larry, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have 2 minutes, so I'm going to make this very, very quick. I have my background, which I've spoken many times in many meetings in Monroe County. I have a military background. Obviously, I spoke to that earlier. 12 years in the Miami-Dade Police Department. I have been married 45 years, high school sweetheart. Came home after a 2-year tour and married, went back overseas. I have 2 grown children and 4 grandchildren. This is my home 4 generations. I learned to fish and dive down here to my son and my grandchildren as well. This is my home, and this is what I want to tell you. I have been in this district dozens and dozens and dozens of times. I see the faces out there that I know because I've been here. I've taken the time over the last year and a half to come down and understand who you are. And many of you know who I am. I was at a meeting last night in Upper Key Largo, and I looked around, not a single one of the 5 people who are running for the United States Congress would even show up. Well, if they're not going to show up in a contest to get elected, do you think they're going to show up after it's over with? The reality is you have to have somebody who knows who you are, and I've knocked on thousands of doors in Monroe County. I've knocked on 14,000 doors in a year and a half. And I will tell you that I will bring your voice, not my voice, your voice to Congress. Because I believe, I deeply, deeply believe we're losing our grip on our country because the people no longer have a voice. It's the money, and it's the power of politics, and it's the organizations that tell you who you're going to vote for. I want to close with this. They've been digging for a long time to find something wrong with me. They've looked everywhere, in places I can't tell you about. They found one thing that you've heard on the radio. He doesn't live in the district. How many have heard that from one of my opponents? Well, I don't live in the district. Under the United States Constitution, I don't have to. I live closer to the middle of the district than anyone because they all live up in the north end of the district. I live in the middle, closer to Homestead. I lived in the district 2 years ago. After redistricting it, they moved it over a little bit. My house is right outside the district, and the line runs right through the city, and I'm mayor of for the last 8 years. So, you know, don't let that nonsense fool you because that's what they're telling you. What you need to look out for are the people who are special interests in taking a pocket full of IOUs to Washington because of all the special endorsements that they're getting out of Washington. I refused every one of them. They haven't spoken to another one of these candidates, haven't called us. Thank you very much, and God bless you, and God bless the Keys, and I'm going to get a margarita. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, gentlemen. One of these men may be your Republican candidate for the House of Representatives. Could the judges come up, or the judge candidates? The judge and the judge candidates. While they're coming up, I'll once again thank Kelly Friend with Audio Video in Paradise. She's doing extra duty tonight. She's going to catch me when I step off the stage at one point.
The AC is heating me, and I am so cold. I have worries over there with the AC. But she had just
So, settle down. Before you, and a couple of housekeeping notes. Our former Justice Department official reminded me to remind you guys, the camera is up there. So as great as our panel is, even though they're asking you the question, try to remember to talk to the audience and talk to Janelica there, who's going to be waiting. Or even look at Sloan, he'll wave to you. But something for the audience. The four people we have up here are running for two separate races. We have our incumbent Judge Mark Jones. His opponent is Don Barrett. They're running against each other, or they're running for the same seat. Jack Bridges and Bonnie Helms here are running for a separate seat. So it is confusing at times, especially on your ballot. But we kind of had to have them all up here at the same time, and judges' races tend to be very polite. So we're going to get right into the questions. You've seen most of these people before. You're going to get to know them a little bit more in the next 25 minutes or so. So Jenna, you're up. You can, whoever you want to ask, and then because there's two, we're kind of doing this on the fly because we've had some changes tonight. If a candidate from one race is asked the question, if his or her opponent feels compelled to respond, then we'll allow them to. So that way, if we could, we'll try to keep it race to race and not have questions that all four answer. That work? Yeah. We'll try it that way.
So I'll start with Jones. There's constant media attention on what some would say is over-aggressive police actions. Is police brutality an issue in Key West?
Good evening, everyone.
None of that soft entry. We want to go there.
I make my decisions in view of what happens in Key West from the bench and the courtroom. And frankly, I have not seen too many cases over the years where we've had police brutality. In fact, I have never personally presided over a case where a law enforcement officer was charged with a crime. I had a case, it was an interesting case as a matter of fact. It was a Fantasy Fest several years ago, and some officers were charged with a tort, a civil action for battery. A very interesting case, by the way, and in fact the jury did find in that instance the police did exceed the bounds of what we expect from law enforcement people, and there was an award in that case. And there have been some others, but frankly, from my vantage point, I can't say that Key West has a problem with police brutality overall. There's certainly isolated incidents, but from what I see, it's not an overall problem.
It's up to you. Yep.
Same question. Good evening, everyone. I have worked on both sides of the aisle in criminal court. I was a prosecutor for 9 years, in which I dealt with a lot of police officers in this county, from every agency, the sheriff's office, the police department, thousands of cases, and I got to know a lot of these folks on an individual, personal basis. Most of them are good folks. They want to do the right thing. Some of them are newer than others and might not always know what the right thing is, but most of them, I think their heart's in the right place and they want to do the right thing. I've also worked as a criminal defense attorney, and I've represented many folks who have had, let's say, dust-ups with police officers. And I've heard things that were disturbing from my clients. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about anybody in particular, but I've heard things that are disturbing. And I think what's important to remember is that nobody's above the law, nobody's below the law. So there's laws that we all have to follow, and there's laws that police officers have to follow as well when they're doing their job. And if I'm a judge, everyone who comes into my courtroom will be on an even plane. No one will be assumed to be correct, or right or wrong. I will hear the facts. This is one area where I definitely agree with my opponent. These things should be decided in a courtroom, not based on what you read on the front page of the paper, what you heard, your neighbor talking about, that sort of thing. These things should be decided in a courtroom because they're obviously very serious matters. They're serious for both sides and need to be taken seriously.
Naja. Not necessarily, but if it gets unbalanced, I will bring you back into balance.
Jack, you stated that you would like to make more time for juveniles who've gotten into trouble but who can still be turned around. Can you tell us a little more about this concept? Would it go beyond just holding hearings and hearing about status? Would you be spearheading something even more proactive than that?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for being here, and I'd like to thank all of our panelists for taking the time to write these questions. My name is Jack Bridges. I'm running for circuit judge. I have made a big issue about putting more time in the docket for juveniles and kids who just have started down the wrong path, but who I believe can be straightened out. I think that we need to start with a certain premise that a lot of times kids don't always think very far in advance. How many of your parents probably know that? In fact, some of the ones in court didn't think far enough ahead to avoid getting caught. Now, when we're dealing with juveniles, we have to take into account that a lot of times they're not going to think that far ahead, unfortunately. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them do not always have the very best of structure at home. Now, when they get put on probation, they're going to be dealing with a probation officer who's going to do everything that they can, the juvenile probation officer, is going to do everything they can to give them the structure that they need. But if they're not getting it at home, it's not going to be a high likelihood of success. That's why what I want to do is add a juvenile follow-up day. So that instead of saying, I'm going to put you on probation, and hopefully you won't violate, but if you do, I'll see you when you violate. I'd rather say, I'm going to put you on probation, and I'll see you next Wednesday. And when you come back into court, I want to hear how you're doing in school. I want to hear how things are going at home. I want to hear how your summer job is going. I want to hear about your girlfriend, your boyfriend. And I want to give you the encouragement and the structure, or the admonishment, or the commendation that you need. My overall goal is I want to hear people say, last week that judge said he was proud of me. This week I want to make him proud again. Thank you.
Let me answer the same question, even though I can definitely address the children in our courts. As a mediator, also as a step parent, and a semi-foster parent. I've raised some teenagers, so I do know how, yes, children make mistakes, children need direction, and of course, we as a judge can assist in that and provide some insight, some direction to anyone that might be before us. My staff person that I currently have at the office actually is in her 20s, and she told me a story about how Judge Jones gave her a chance when she was a child before him, and it was a one-time instance where she was with some friends and got into some trouble that she shouldn't have, that peer pressure. And what the judge said to her made a difference for her, and she's now a productive person in society, and she went the right direction. So I realize that when we're sitting up there, that yes, we can have a real impact and a real influence on children's lives. And so yes, what Jack Bridges is proposing in terms of follow-up, that is status hearings and continuing to make sure that things are moving along and the children are following, or a child that's in trouble is following the directives that they need. That can happen. That can happen through the court system, but even when you're there in front of that child, you're also talking to the family, and that as well. Okay, I'll wrap up. That's why you're shaking your head. All right, thank you.
Bonnie and Jack, you actually opened the door for one of my questions, which is around the use of restorative justice as a model instead of punitive justice. Could you talk about your views about restorative justice programs in working with courts? Either one of you wants to start?
Let's have Bonnie go first.
I'm not directly familiar with restorative versus punitive, but I will take a stab at it. I mean, I'm presuming that punitive would mean, we're talking children, or are we talking criminals?
We're talking children and youth, same population. Punitive would be where there is some kind of incarceration or commitment to a child's facility. Yeah. Restorative to a program like Neighborhood Accountability Board or something like that.
I mean, obviously, when we're talking about children and those first-time issues, first mistakes that might be made, restorative makes perfect sense. Of course, as a judge, you have to evaluate the facts, the circumstances, the child that's involved, and what is going to work or not work. I mean, that is the discretion that you have in the court system, you have as a judge. So I would work to balance what is necessary to ensure that the community is safe, but also that that child has a chance. Thank you.
That's a good question. Now, as a general rule, there are 4 schools of thought when it comes to sentencing, whether it's juveniles or adults. The first school of thought is that sentences should serve a rehabilitative or restorative purpose, in which we positively teach people life skills to be able to help them correct their behavior. The second type of school of thought is that it serves a deterrent purpose, of an individual deterrent, I don't want to do that again, and a general deterrent, I don't want what happened to that guy to happen to me. The third school of thought is called warehousing. That's when we put people away just because they're not going to be restored, they're not going to be rehabilitated, they're a danger to society, you just got to put them where they can't hurt anybody anymore. And then the fourth school of thought is not all that well used, it's called utilitarianism, and that's when people, it's basically feeding society's desire to see some kind of revenge. There was a crime committed, there was a wrong committed, somebody paid a pound of flesh. As a general rule, I subscribe to the 3 former schools of thought. Rehabilitative whenever possible, balanced with some deterrence, and of course, sadly in some cases, there's going to be some warehousing because some people just aren't going to live in society, and society does have a right to defend itself.
I think it's real important to know that the 16th Judicial Circuit is a great believer and a big participant in just what Randy was saying. We have a juvenile drug court. And juvenile drug court is a very comprehensive program that's designed to do just that, provide restorative justice for a lot of these children who get in the system, and they can be turned around. It's not too late. It's not like they've been in the system a long time. So they have drug counseling. Their education is emphasized. They do report to the judge every month to see how they do it in school. The parents are there. How are they doing at home? And it's really amazing when these children receive this sort of structure. that a lot of them thrive and can avoid what I call graduating into the adult criminal justice system, because once you make that step, you're one step further to having a number on your back in the prison system. So we're committed here in the circuit to restorative justice when it's appropriate.
Don, you want to tackle that, or?
As a prosecutor, I prosecuted juvenile cases, seen all sorts of juvenile crime, from the things that probably most of us in this room did when we were juveniles, to some very serious crime. And I think there are, regardless of age, there are certain people, like Mr. Bridges said, that unfortunately can't live in society, have to be separated from society. But having said that, I think we all, especially when it comes to children, we all want to save children, we want to get children on the right track, especially because about 95% of juvenile crime in this county, maybe 90%, is I'm going to say, typical kid stuff. And we want to get them off drugs, we want to get them educated so that they can become productive members of society. Now, when I talk about the incarceration or separating people from society, I've spent time in jail cells, not myself, not having been arrested, but I've sat in jail cells with clients. And if you've never been in a jail or a prison, I've been in Florida State Prison before, that's where death row is. If you've never been in a jail or a prison, they're very unpleasant places. And they should be reserved for the most violent people in our society that need to be separated from society. The rest of them, we need to get them on the right track.
That was interesting. I saw the reporters in the room get really excited, and then Bill.
Question for Ms. Helms. The health of the incumbent has become an issue in this campaign. It's the reason he's not here tonight. How important should this issue be for voters, and would you be willing to disclose your medical records if the others in your campaign do the same?
Another softball.
Okay. As you are aware, because of our judicial canons, we are limited in terms of what we can say relative to the ability or inability of our judge to sit, and that's too bad that is an issue, and that we can't, because you, as Monroe County residents, as voters, this is an election. You have a right to be informed. And yes, I would have no problem with disclosing my medical records if that was something that was required of me. As a judge, you have to obviously be ready, able to hear these cases, to have the stamina, to have the smarts, to have the knowledge, to have the expertise. And if you don't, it's a disservice to the community, it's a disservice to the judicial system, the court system. So I'm sorry that we can't talk about these things. The Supreme Court restricts us, and obviously it's a system that needs to be changed.
Well, first of all, I think that it's important that we remember Judge Slayton for the service that he has always been doing, and that we all wish him well in his recovery from whatever ailment it is that he has. Quite frankly, I agree with Ms. Helms in that if somebody's health is an issue, then yes, the voters have a right to know. That's why we have elections. Now, as far as calling upon someone to disclose their health records, the bottom line is I can do that all day long, but that's not up to me. So I don't think there's any reason for me necessarily to comment on it. If it becomes an issue and anybody wants to see my health records, you're welcome to do so. A little high blood pressure, there's nothing sexy there. All right. So thank you very much.
All right, this is for Barrett and Jones. What's your vision for the future of our judicial system here in the Keys? What changes would you advocate and why? Sorry.
Girard bear?
I hesitate to tell this little anecdote because I'm afraid that people won't believe me, but about 10 or 12 years ago, I was a prosecutor here in Key West, and we used to walk to the courtroom with a large cart full of about 4 crates on it full of files. So we have a few hundred files in there. I'm talking about a cart that's 3 or 4 feet wide. We go to court, 80% of the case would be continued. We have to pull the file out, write the note, put it back, pull the next file out, write the note, pull it back, put it back. And I thought to myself, there should be a little tablet computer that we could do this on. Before there was such a thing as a tablet computer, I saw it in my head. I was like, why can't we just tap something, write the note, tap something, write the note? Well, I don't know, 10 years later, they came out with an iPad. And I have an iPad, and my office is entirely paperless. I have every file that I've ever had, ever as a lawyer, not as a prosecutor, but as a private lawyer, I have stored digitally, and I can pull up right now on my iPhone. Now, you ask me for something that I did on a case 5, 6 years ago, any document, I can pull it up right now on my iPhone, email it, or text it to you. The point is that everything can be stored digitally now, everything. And the clerk's office, they're doing e-filing, you e-file, but we're still taking paper files to court. The entire court system should be paperless. And this is about speed and efficiency. I mean, I like trees, but it's not just about saving trees, it's about speed and efficiency. And it's about making court run better and faster and smarter. Thanks, Doc.
My vision for the future of our justice system here in the Keys is to continue to do a great job and be the best in the entire state. And I believe that's exactly what we have. There's no question that technology will be part of that, but the technology isn't the be-all or the end-all. It's great when it works, but it's a big problem when it doesn't. I measure the quality of justice by having 3 functioning courthouses up and down the Keys. We hope in the future to be able to have major renovation of the Plantation Key Courthouse. Marathon was done recently. That was dedicated. It's a great courthouse. We have a new courthouse here in Key West that's about 4 years old. Get PK done. We're going to have 3 fully functioning modern courtrooms that are going to provide justice for everybody in the Keys. I vision to be part of that.
We really, unless someone's got someone they have to, is it a quick one? Or can you? If you got a quick, well, if you would, we really are kind of out of time, so I was going to move to your closing statements. Give each one of you a minute and a half, and I'll really give you the hook in 2. So start with Jack, and we'll go across. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
No, I appreciate your time. I think all of us probably do. In the last 6 years, the seat that I'm running for, has handled small claims, it's handled civil cases, probate cases, family law cases, criminal cases. I think that given the fact that we have an incumbent judge who has some health problems at this time and has taken a medical leave of absence, given the fact that we have another vacancy on the circuit court right now caused by Judge Alden's resigning, I feel that it is important that we have someone step into this position who is ready and willing to start trying cases and dealing with the backlog that is building. Now, I have practiced in the last 15 years, 13 of which were in the Keys. I have practiced civil law, I've practiced criminal law, family law, probate law, dependency law, and I've written a couple of wills and contracts and a nasty letter or 2 along the way. I've also represented government agencies. I served as a magistrate, conducting hundreds of hearings and actually trying cases as a presiding officer over those cases. I'm ready to step into this position, and I'd be honored if you allow me to do so. I also want to point out that I think that not only is experience important, but temperament is important too. You see, when people come to court, often they are the victims of crime. They may be going through a divorce in which they are grieving the fact that something very special has died. They may be in because they are in foreclosure and they're suffering the uncertainty and the embarrassment that comes with losing their home. In other words, people in court are often at the very lowest point of their lives, and they need to be treated with dignity and respect. And one thing that I look forward to being able to do, although you have to follow the law, is showing dignity and respect to these people who need to be treated with all dignity and respect. This is the last time I'll be speaking to you, I believe, so I'm Jack Bridges. I'd be honored to earn your vote on August the 26th. Thank you.
Jack described me. I am the most experienced. I've been practicing in this circuit court for 23 years. My general civil practice includes a specialization in family law, but I also handle probate, guardianship, and as an expert in family law, I handle complex cases. So if anyone is ready and able to get in there and get this family court moving, because this judgeship has historically been a family judgeship. If anybody's going to get in there and fix what's been neglected and move this court forward, it's myself. And I want to talk also about briefly my vision for the courts and the Monroe County courts, which kind of goes way beyond probably what any of us could do. But, you know, I'm not a litigator, I'm a mediator. I litigate, but I prefer mediation. And I talk about alternative dispute resolution because I feel so strongly that that helps families. It helps families save time, it helps families save money, it keeps them out of court. And I tell you, most family cases are settled in mediation. So as a judge, I can promote that and I can expand our program that we currently have in our court system. And I believe strongly that families are our most important commodity in this community, and that will be my focus as your judge. And I hope you vote on August 26th and tell all your friends to vote. Thank you.
Thanks for Hometown PAC for giving us opportunities throughout this campaign to speak and state how we feel about this election. In 1996, I was elected. I won a primary and went into the general, and you all gave me the opportunity to serve as one of only 4 circuit judges in the whole Keys. That's 18 years ago. And I never forgot what I said on the campaign trail. I worked my hardest to be an honest, fair, knowledgeable, respectful judge. And I've never forgotten what I said, one of my slogans: the court is here to serve the people aren't here to serve the courts. And I still believe in that today, and I'm ready to continue to do that. I believe I have the experience, the knowledge, and the integrity to continue to work hard and do a good job. I'm 60 years old, I'm married, I have 3 children, an honorably discharged Navy veteran. I've been in the Keys 34 years. I've been a lawyer in 2 states for 34 years, and most importantly, I've occupied the very seat for the last almost 18 years to which I seek re-election. I've done thousands of cases in every division of circuit court. I've been the chief judge, and right now, I am the most experienced circuit judge in the entire Keys. I have the knowledge. I know how to do the job, folks. All these hard, difficult cases that come before a circuit judge, I've done them. I know how to do them, and most importantly, I'll continue to do them with integrity. That's the most important thing. There's no justice without integrity. I'm an honest judge, a fair judge. I'll make my decisions based upon the law, the evidence, and what's right. Not always what's popular, not always what's convenient, not always what's easy, but what's right. So I ask you, please re-elect Circuit Judge Mark Jones, and for that Group 1 seat on August 26th, check mark.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here tonight as well. I know many of you have been at other hometown PACs, but this is our last opportunity to address you. 11 months ago, I filed to run for circuit judge after about 6 months of serious deliberation on whether or not I was going to do it. I have my own law firm. It's successful. I enjoy being a lawyer, but I thought that the job could be done better. Not that it's being done terribly, but it could be done better, and I think that I can do it better. I think that the areas where I can improve upon is I will be fair, I will be courteous, and I will be efficient. When I say fair, I said earlier that everyone will come into my courtroom on an even playing field. No one's presumed right, no one's presumed wrong. You must be fair to all litigants. And you must not say anything in court that doesn't need to be said. You're there as a referee. You're there to call balls and strikes. You're not there to inject your own opinions, beliefs, and thoughts about the case. I said I'll be courteous. A judge is a public servant. They're paid by tax dollars. Every person that walks into the courtroom, every person, even the ones who are charged with the most heinous of crimes, every person must be treated with courtesy when they walk into the courtroom. And I said I'll be efficient. Listen, there's only 4 circuit judges in this county. There's a lot of cases. It's a challenge, I'm sure, to manage all the cases that are in this county. But you must be efficient. And if you do the things that I've been saying all night, you will be more efficient automatically. You will get more things done and more cases resolved. I've been a lawyer for 18 years. I'm 43 years old. I've been married to my wife, Rosario, for 8 years. We have 3 children. Been a lawyer for 18 years. I operate my own law practice. I've had 50 jury trials. So I have the experience as well to be a circuit judge in this county. I'd like to ask you for your vote on August 26th, which is next week. Our race will be over next week. There's only 2 of us, so you can early vote now. And if not, I ask for your vote on August 26th. I will humbly serve the citizens of this county with the dignity they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you to our judge and judge candidates. And as was just stated, in the race between Don and Mark, one of them will definitely win next week. Well, there's only 2, so they have to. The other race with 3 people in it, the winner has to get 50% plus 1 vote. In a 3-way race, we'll see what happens. So we could see some of the 2 of them up again. With that, would School Board District 5 candidates come on up? Richard Bradley, are you in the room? Just check. All right, let's get right to it. We'll take a little break after this set. So we kind of know the deal now. So Naja, you're up for. I think we have Dennis Kelta-Jerome. I got it. And the incumbent Ron Martin. Naja, you're up to ask a question. Go for it.
Mr. Martin, when I volunteered, when my kids were in elementary school at Gerald Adams, I noticed their classes were fully integrated, and that Black, Hispanic, and white students sat side by side and were all equally engaged in learning. Something happened after that, and I can't quite understand what. It seems to have begun at HOB. By the time they got to Key West High School, there seemed to be 2 separate schools. There are honors classes and there are regular classes. And we didn't have that when I went to school. By the time my kids reached Key West High, Black students had all but disappeared from their classrooms. Where did they go? What goes on in those regular classes? Are those students being prepared for the future, or are they being babysat?
Are you talking about the ethnic kids that aren't being challenged?
I'm talking about how in my children's classes, by the time they were in high school, there were no longer any Black students basically in their classes.
Okay, well, the Black students are there in that school though. You can try to figure this out the best way you can, folks, but I would think that when you go back and you start watching the progression of students from elementary school through middle school and then into high school, you start looking at the support systems at home and in the families. And that is one thing that I think, we hear over and over, that the schools have to do everything, but we have to think about it this way, folks. It takes a village to bring these kids forward. The last week at the back to school welcome with all the employees in the district, General honoring the 4-star general who went into Louisiana after Katrina. one of his keynote points was parenting and starting at the home. And then he also mentioned routine things. And my answer to you is some of these kids probably just aren't getting the routine leadership they need at home to bring them forward to be in classes that are more academically advanced. Now, you can say, well, it's the school system's fault maybe to bring them all into AP classes or honors classes. We can do what we can do. And I'm not going to stand up here and say I got a magic wand to bring every kid an honor student. Not every kid is ever going to be an honor student. That's why we need to look at the whole student anyway. You know, college is not for everyone. We have to have vocational programs and look at these kids as human beings, not just as someone who's going to sit in an advanced class, a general class, or an honors class. Is that it?
I'd like to address this in a more general way. It doesn't really matter whether the support system is there for all of the children. It doesn't really matter if it's a low socioeconomic situation. You know what really matters? What really matters is whether the school and the school system embraces each and every child, assesses what the child needs, works as hard and as smartly as they can to meet the needs of that child. 42 years with children K through 12 in the state of Florida. I never turned my back and never looked for a reason to say that a child wasn't going to be successful. My job every day was to make sure that every child could aspire and could achieve. That's what we do when we call ourselves professional educators. So I'm talking in a generality. What happens specifically, I've been talking out of turn. But I will tell you this, there is not a child in Monroe County that would not receive my emphasis, my attention, my work, and my support. And I would expect everyone who works within this school district to have that attitude.
If I could just do a quick follow-up. Mr. Martin, I think a part of my question there at the end was what is going on in those regular classes? And you spoke about vocational training, but what are we doing in those regular classes? Are they being prepared if they're not college-bound students?
Well, they're being prepared for, you know, at Coral Shores High School, I had marine mechanics, I had the home ec program, I had the video program. In Marathon, they have vocational programs in Key West. They're being prepared, but you got to understand that being prepared is sending them out so that they can be vocationally or get a job or be a performer in society. I've been in this business 37 years, 41 years up and down the Keys, mainly in the Upper Keys, ladies and gentlemen. And I can tell you right now, you can go find people and ask them about Ron Martin. He will tell you that every kid...
Ron, that was a follow-up to the question.
Okay.
You were entering a train of thought that was going to go along. We'll have plenty of time. Yeah.
Randy, again to Mr. Caltagirone. My whole career has been working in nonprofits, both on boards and in my primary work. And there's various types of boards. Some are policy boards, some are administrative boards, and some are management boards. Which makes me raise this general question. What is the purpose of the school board?
Well, it's not to make the news on a daily basis in a negative way, that's for sure. By state statute, a school board is there to administratively monitor the management system that's in place. And in our case, our school board selects and appoints a superintendent who then indeed, with his team, has to manage the system on a day-to-day basis. And the board's job is to do due diligence on every matter that comes before it. And by the way, all matters need to come before the board, not just selective matters. All information needs to come before that board. They're the ones that the community elected to represent them in that fashion. And they need to have that information, and they will act accordingly. Their job is not to micromanage. Their job is not to duly influence the superintendent, but to guide, mentor, direct, ask good questions, make requests, look for more information. Those are the kinds of things that I would expect for the board to be doing, and that's what I would be doing once I join the board.
Could you give me the question again?
Well, besides the very expensive boards, what is the purpose?
School board's purpose is to set policy and make sure the superintendent and his leadership team do the job, and to give the support that we need to the teachers and the students throughout the county. You know, it's not easy sometimes to sit there and prohibit or to not try to micromanage, but as a board now, we have an appointed superintendent. We have to give that fellow or that lady the trust that if we are the board and we hire them, to let them go about and hire their leadership team and do what's good for this district. It's a management deal, you know. They have, we set policy, we appoint our leader, and then we let him or her hire her people or his people, and then we watch and maintain it.
Okay, Mr. Martin, you've talked in other forums about the possibility of moving district headquarters up the Keys. What have you done to make that happen?
Well, I've been vocal about it. We have a 5-year plan. I think we've already moved the ESC offices out of Key West. We moved the technology out of Trumbull Point. It's over at HOB. The superintendent, I think, is acting or has an office. Not, I think, no, he works out of Marathon High School a couple days a week. Our new assessment and accountability appointee, Mr. Dave Murphy, he will be housed in the Upper Keys. The maintenance program, we're going to be moving completely out of Trumbull Point in the next couple of years. It's a work in progress, and it will happen, I guarantee you.
Let me follow up. Where do you see district headquarters moving? You've got Marathon Manor property vacant next to Marathon High School.
Well, I don't know if we're going to put them in Marathon Manor, but there's plenty of space in Sugarloaf. We still have space. We do have space in Marathon in the high school, middle school buildings. It would take some money to get them ready for that, but it's a feasibility. And you know, with technology now, you can do things. You don't have to be located in one spot. We can even move some people all the way up to the Upper Keys and house them up there. But one thing for certain, you do need to get out of Trumbull.
Yeah, I won't belabor the point. It, to me, makes a lot of sense because we live in the Upper Keys, and oftentimes what we are doing has to be in Key West, and this isn't necessarily school-related, it's arts-related. It would have made more sense to me to see the office in the center, which is Marathon. There's a lot of possibilities. New Switlick needs some revision, if not some reconstruction completely, and I envision another floor on top of that building with an elevator. And that's a great place for staff. We have existing space, obviously, at the Marathon Middle High School. You are paying, I am paying to air condition that space every day and to keep the utilities running every day for that space, and there's a logical place right there if you're talking about giving taxpayers benefit for their money. But I'm very much in favor of centralizing this district operations in Marathon.
This is for both. What would you both say is the biggest problem facing our classrooms today?
Universally, it's the same everywhere you go. I was all over the state of Florida as a change agent for the DOE, the Department of Ed. And so the problems are universal. The biggest thing that I think that we're looking at right now is the way in which the family unit has changed over the last many decades. It's made it a very different ballgame. Children are coming in. I had an experience recently at a school where 55% of the children came from a home where there was a divorce. And in one case, there were so many changes of parents, the child ended up with two people who were neither one was the original parent, which is really quite amazing. So we're talking about stability. Stability is not there at home, so it really puts a different emphasis, or requires a different emphasis on the part of the teacher when they're dealing with that family unit. And therefore, communication is totally important. Absolutely vital that whoever is there as the parent needs to be drawn into that child's education. That's not an expensive thing to do. There's no money attached to the process. I have a lot of experience in what that is. But we need to do it. We need to draw them into their child's life in the school setting. Whether it's one parent, two parents, or a step-parent, it doesn't matter. Draw them in, and that's one of the biggest problems. And the other thing is that children don't necessarily come to school with a mindset about behavior. And I know the district is doing a lot, trying to do a number of things this coming year with that.
Well, I've already talked a lot about parental involvement in the home environment and how important that is for the total student's development, and so I'm going to leave it at that. You know, one thing I will say though, and some people will say, well, charter schools, and I'm not against charter schools, but I even hesitate to say the word, but I've always supported them on my 4 years at the board. But if you're a parent in a charter school, you're required to come in there and do like 20 hours a month or 30 hours a month parental volunteer. We can't do that in the public schools. We can try to do it, but it just doesn't work. So, you know, we need to somehow come up with a magic formula, and the government's not going to do it for us, and how to get parents more involved with our children. There's a lot of parents that are, and I really will tell you this, ladies and gentlemen. It's my experience in the Upper Keys as a principal and assistant principal. I did have a lot of parental involvement. I didn't have to go out and bang on the doors, but it was still hard to get them in there sometimes, like at DAC meetings or PTA meetings. One other thing, one of the problems I think education faces right now is all these doggone government mandates that we have to deal with. I think if government would lay off us and let us as a school system come back down to the grassroots and let us trust in our teachers and our leaders here in the community, we would be a lot better off in a lot of ways. Get big government out of the schools and let us run them the way we want to.
Mr. Caltagirone, you stated that Monroe County schools should be #1 in the state. What specific types of reform would you push for in order to make that happen, and would enhanced vocational training be a part of that?
Well, vocational training is always an important part of any educational system, and these days it's absolutely vital and necessary. When I said #1, it's I would love to see us in the coming couple of years rise to the top 10% in the state of Florida. We were there once before. We need to be there again. We have the resources, we have the talent in the classroom, we have administrative talent scattered throughout the district, we have beautiful new buildings with a few exceptions, which we need to do something about, folks. And all of that's there. And what we need to do is we need to be really, really smart about how we put the puzzle together. I'm a dot connector. What I'm known for all over the state and even beyond the state is my ability to come into an organization, look at what the assets are, look at what the liabilities are, look at the potential, having spoken to all the stakeholders, and see what's possible, and then help to construct the completed puzzle. And it's a really wonderful process. We have everything here we need to do that. We don't have to add anything other than the desire to get that picture put together. And the vocational ed is very, very important. We need to have programs for even the children who really wish to go to a university or a college after high school. We need to have programs for them so they have a saleable skill. I had to work my way through school. And I think we need to give all the children a saleable skill, whether they're going to a four-year institution of higher learning or not, so they have a way to supplement themselves, because you never know what's going to happen.
Don't care really if we're #1 or #10. What I care about is our students, all of them across the board, are being taken care of at school every day, and if we're teaching them something. What I care about is letting the teachers have a little liberty and not box them into a little square box every day and worry about blanking in a special little dot on some doggone standardized test. We just got to stop this mentality, folks. Now, some of you have read about Finland, for instance. Oh, and they're a great school system. But you know what they do? They put a lot of money in staff development for the teachers. They say, trust our teachers. Let them go out there and do what they want to do. And they also respect their teachers and pay them a doggone lot of money. So, you know, they don't have big government messing with them. They just take care of the teachers and trust them and let them run the schools. So, you know, number one is great. I love it. But, you know, that's not the end all end. Heck, I remember, you know, I was at C High School my first year as a principal. I thought, oh my goodness. But down in my heart, I knew I was doing a lot of good for every kid in that school. Of course, after that, I was never a C again. But we just have to think about students as human beings and teachers as human beings and get off this thing about, well, we're number 9, we're number 10, we're 21st in the state, or we're the 38th. You know, as long as we feel good about what we're doing with our kids, and they're going places. I mean, you could look up and down the Keys, Key West High School Marathon. We have kids going to Harvard, MIT, Duke, Vanderbilt. We send them everywhere, and we also send them to great vocational schools. Thank you.
The question may not be quick, the answer might be. The word stakeholder comes up. When we think about stakeholders, we think about students, parents, teachers, administrators, other staff, and then we think about taxpayers, contractors, society in general, politicians, consultants in Tallahassee and Washington. So the simple question of all that, who or what does the school board primarily serve? Ron?
Students. Children. Well, I want to announce to you that I'm a happily married guy, 46 years on the 24th of this month, and my beautiful wife is sitting in the front. Here she is. I've been referred to by one of the local papers that endorsed me as a fresh new face with new ideas. And folks, I'm over 70 years old. There's nothing fresh about me. Nothing at all. I did shower for you today.
Thank you for that.
But what I do have is a tremendous amount of experience working not only in the schools in which I've worked, which is about 10 or 11 different schools over 42 years, and at all grade levels, but also as a change agent, as going into counties, into districts, working with schools, working with the district, working nationally with some other programs, educational programs. And I have all that experience. And as a retiree, Lee and I are both retired teachers, I didn't see myself sitting around the pool and doing crossword puzzles for the rest of my days. I didn't think that was going to be a great thing for me to do. And I have a lot to offer as a public servant. I'm not a politician. I don't know what that is at this point. I'm doing political things, but I'm not a politician. What I am is a public servant. My greatest love in the world is children. My greatest joy is seeing light bulbs go off all the time in their eyes. That's my greatest joy. I have goose flesh. There it is. It makes me really get excited. I'm 70 years old, and something gets me excited. But it's that. But it's that. I don't mean to make light. And I would be honored, I would be privileged to serve our beautiful community and to serve the wonderful children of this community as a member of our school board. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. When I came to this board 4 years ago, this school system was not doing real well. Now the third year in, I think it did a little better. The second year, a lot better. And there's nobody in this audience that's going to tell Ron Martin that this school system isn't better off today than it was last year or the year before that. You just can't do that. It isn't a better, the bus is out of the ditch. No, I don't mean to take Bobby's bus out of his hands there, but the bus is out of the ditch and we're headed in the right direction. Now, you all know me. I've been around. I haven't been endorsed by any newspapers, doggone it, but I have been endorsed by, some action committees, political committees, United Teachers of Monroe, and that one there really meant a lot to me because I did a couple things on the board that I really didn't like doing because of the budget crunch to teachers. It bothered me a lot. You can ask my wife. I had a couple more hairs for a couple of those votes. But I have been in the Keys now 41 years. My wife and I came down in 1973. Doggone near left the next day because the bugs were so bad I just thought I was going to need a transfusion. But we stayed here. And I love what I do. Being on the school board isn't a retirement job. And anybody in this room that thinks it is out of their mind. It's just not that way. There's a lot of work. And there's a lot of good that comes from it. And I think I can bring this experience that I've had up and down the Keys, and especially in the Upper Keys. You ask people up there that know me, they'll tell you Ron Martin has integrity, he's honest, and he cares about one thing, and that's kids. And that's about all I got to say, folks. You can go on and vote for me next Tuesday if you haven't already. Now, place these little yellow folders on your chairs. You can put all that other information in there and take it home with you tonight and drink a glass of wine and read about it. All right, good night. Thank you.
A very brief intermission for our panelists in case they need to get a drink or something. There's plenty of food. And Ron, there's 3 mosquito control commissioners in the room right now. Dennis is one. One of them, I don't know. Be right back. All right, everyone, this is School Board District 4, kind of the Marathon Upper Keys area. We have incumbent John Dick and his opponent, Catherine Bosworth. As we've been doing, we're going to write the questions. Bill, you're going to open it up tonight, or open it up, so have at it.
John, your first term, you considered yourself a reformer. You voted with Steve Abramsky and frequently in the minority. Do you still consider yourself a reformer?
Yes, I think so. I just don't think we need to do as much reform as we did before. I think we've accomplished a lot of the reform. Is there still a little more to be done? Yes, but I don't think it's at the critical stage that it was years ago. If you remember, I complained about the budget, the waste, and the misuse of money. And we have reeled that in quite a bit. So I don't feel that we were at the stage of the drastic reform that was necessary. If you remember back then when we were pushing reform, we also had many of the state's attorneys attending our meeting. We don't have that anymore.
It's up to you, Bill.
Maybe one more. We've seen some advertising where it's talking about the third vote for reform. How do you feel about being a member of the Gang of Three?
Captain Ed Davison supported me 8 years ago when I ran, and when we were on the school board and having the issues that we had, and Steve and I were doing the fight, I will say that Captain Ed was the only person that ever came to a school board meeting and stood up for us, said for us. So I appreciate Captain Ed's support in that all along. And when I ran 8 years ago, Captain Ed did run some ads of his own. And he asked me the other day, about a month ago, he said, John, I'm gonna run some ads again, and he's people that he's gonna support. And he asked me if I would like that. I said, yes, Ed. He said, the only thing I really ask you, Ed, is please don't go anywhere near a third vote or anything like that, because that's not what I plan to be, and that's not what I want to be. So he didn't. He did something with a second vote, though. But you know what? Ed is my friend. I'm not going to vote as a gang, because this county has already had one Gang of Three, and you saw what happened to them. So I will definitely not be part of any Gang of Three. You will know my votes will always be on the right side of what's good for the students, the staff, and the community, as they've always been.
Would you like to have weigh in on this? John got a question.
Rephrase it. Would you consider yourself more of a reformer or less of a reformer than John?
Well, I guess I would be looking at a different type of reform. I was asked to run by a group of teachers who felt that they were being less than respected, less than considered during the contract negotiations. And even after that was over, I thought, well, you know, that there goes my reason. But I understand that morale still is lagging and needs to be improved. And I would like to be a reformer in that way, in including the teachers and including the community in the deliberations of the school board and listening to what they have to say. I like the idea of giving teachers free rein to go out and challenge the students and to improve the school board that way, the school system that way. And whatever I could do on the board as a reformer in that kind of way, I would like to do.
This is for both of you. Where are we going wrong in our Monroe County schools, and where are we going right?
Where are we going wrong? I think we're going wrong in not watching over what we have to work with. I think that when we have big construction projects, which I'd like to see at PKS because my grandchildren go there, we need to have somebody in charge, some kind of construction project manager, so things don't get away from where they should be. I think that not having one of those is a problem when we have big projects that are being considered. Where we're going right is the wonderful teachers and administrators we have in this county. There are so many great teachers, so many great principals, and it's just inspiring to be in a school and see what's going on in those schools. Even in PKS, which isn't such a pretty school inside, there's so much great stuff going on. I love to go in there and be part of it. And I love the volunteer system that we have, where the parents come in and work with the teachers, with the students. I think that's a wonderful thing, and we need to encourage even more of that.
Well, as far as going wrong, it may be more like what haven't we really accomplished? And of course, we have the achievement gap that you had asked about in the earlier question, and we wish we could have solved that. And we also, of course, we did fall in our grades. Again, I understand what Mr. Martin was saying, as grades aren't, it's more of what we're doing, but we don't want that grade to fall, and that's it's a problem. We need to address that. And as far as what we're doing right, I mean, generally, most of the things are doing right, but I will say that the building program that was started before I even got on the board, which started with the Girard School in your area, it's done a good job. We've done a good job of building schools in all the areas, in the Key West, in the Middle Keys, in the Upper Keys, and we'll continue and finish that. And quite frankly, financially, we're doing a good job with it. I know there's a lot of rhetoric in the headlines now, but you will find out that we're doing a good job financially with it.
Okay, first, John, Dick. Gerald Adams was recently downgraded to a C, and we're told that it should actually be a D school, according to the new system. You hearing me? Gerald Adams was recently downgraded to a C, and we're told that it should actually be a D school. The percentage of minority students at Gerald Adams is over 75%. I got a frantic call just 2 days ago from a parent in Bahama Village who says that many students in the village were just notified that their child would be bused to Gerald Adams this year, and this notice is said to have come to families whose students attended the new HOB school last year. What is going on with the busing? Why are there no buses to Point Siena School? Why are we deliberately sending black children from Bahama Village all the way to Gerald Adams, bypassing two other better performing schools?
Well, what you just asked me, I was not aware of. But so you're saying that they were gone to Point Siena last year, the family had gone to Point Siena?
HOB, and now are being sent to Gerald Adams.
I can't answer that question because I didn't know about it, but, you know, I will look into it. That's not something that we should be doing. Schools, and we do have buses going to Poinciana. We should.
There are no bus schedules for Poinciana, and I spoke to the crossing guard this morning who told me there were no buses to Poinciana.
Well, I'm not going to, I will tell you right now, I promise you I will look into this and find out what's going on, but this is unaware to me. I've been at that school in other years and seen buses come and go. I haven't gone there this year. Personally, you know, a lot of the board members like to go visit the schools in the beginning. When I'm up for an election, I don't like that it's too political, so I wasn't there. I haven't gone to the schools. I won't go to them until after the election. But I will talk to the superintendent tomorrow and find out what's going on with no buses at Poinciana. It's something I was unaware of.
I guess for you, since you're not on the board and you probably would know these details, I mean, is that a concern to you that there is one elementary school that has 75% minorities, and I can tell you that Poinciana, for example, has about 57%, and that we're busing in this budget?
Right. So, 75%, yeah. Are they children that live in the neighborhood of the school, or is it being, you know, it's hard to deal with the percentage.
Well, some are being bused there.
Some are being bused
Past
there.
2 other schools that are performing, that does have a lower percentage of minority.
That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I'm not being in on how these things are decided. It's hard for me to say why that is. It doesn't seem right to go past 2 schools to get to another school unless there's a really good reason for doing that.
It seems to me that there are 2 ways for school systems and their boards to gain energy. One of which is to focus on problems and therefore gain energy from all the problem seekers. In other words, crisis management, reaction. And the other is to be visionary, to hold out a vision of what's possible and gain the energy from those who are visionaries in the community. My experience in my 8 years here is we've had a lot of crisis management and negativity as the focus. I'd like to hear either of you, Catherine, why don't you begin, and then John second, with your vision, your creative, positive vision for our educational system.
Creative and positive. That sounds like Common Core. No, it's got a bad name. A lot of people are against it, but it's really an endeavor to get children to ask why and not what. Not to have rote learning like the FCAT emphasized, but to do research and to be creative. And my vision for the future is a whole bunch of kids in school just loving to learn and engaged in learning and working to, if you're going to have a test at the end of the year, that it's not a test that moves around all over like the FCAT did, like a moving target, and where are we going to go to this time at the whims of the legislature. But something that's stationary, something that they can aim for, the teachers and the students, and something that they can aim higher than. And that's my vision for the future.
Well, you're absolutely correct. When I was on the board 8 years ago, I didn't expect it to be crisis management when I first got on, but within 6 months it turned out to be. And I think it's a good thing that I did handle the crisis management. This term, the reason I'm running one more time is we've finally come past that point and we've done a vision. Part of the crisis management that we had to go through is because we had 5 different superintendents and 4 different finance directors. Now we've got a set team at the top, and we've set a vision. We've started to work on that vision, implementing it. So I want to be on I've been on a board for 8 years that was crisis management. There's no question about it. That's not what I wanted, but it's what the cards that we were dealt. I think we all should be grateful that the board was strong enough, at least enough of the members to deal with it. But now I think we are going to be in a visionary state, and I think this school district will be in very good shape at the end of this next term.
If you could change one of Mr. Dick's votes on the school board on a major issue that would change the direction of an important issue, what would that be?
Well, the teacher contract was very contentious and led to problems in morale. And I think the idea of insisting on a contract with the teachers that said, well, this contract is good for you, but if we want to change it anytime we want, we have the right to do that. And I think that's not a contract you should ask somebody to sign. And so if I was going to change a vote on the board, I would change one of those votes for the contract.
John, you want to defend that?
Sure. Well, if you change the vote, it would have still only been 4-1. Those were 5 all unanimous votes. I would tell you it's a good thing that the board did keep this district financially viable. Had we been forced to pay the raise that was in that contract, we would have wound up laying off all the first, second, and third year teachers in the school district to make up for that difference. Would have been at least 40 or something teachers to be laid off. And then the classes would have been overcrowded for the rest of the teachers. This is the part that never gets out there. All you hear is the rhetoric, oh, the board is bad, the board is bad. The board saved the school district financially. And it's a vote that I did it was not a pleasant vote. My wife and daughter are teachers in the school district. And as Ron has said many times, it's been an agonizing vote, but it was a thing that had to be done.
What's your position on Florida virtual schools?
Well, again, this is another one, whether you like it or not, it's a legislature rule. We have students that graduate from school have to have taken a virtual class. If they graduate from high school, they have to have taken it. Is this something that's going to be more and more in the future? Yes, I believe it will be. The only thing I do hope it doesn't turn around where you wind up getting an auditorium like the back behind us here, an auditorium with 300 kids and one teacher on a video screen. But it's part of the future, and I think we have to accept it, but we have to gauge it and monitor it. I don't want to see it get out of hand.
Virtual schools, I think they serve quite a purpose in the schools. If a student has a class that they need to graduate, they can take that class. It's a good fill-in in many ways, but I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. I think that being a teacher all of my life, I know that there's something that goes on in the classroom that doesn't go on with the computer screen. Right now, I'm an adjunct instructor here at Florida Keys Community College, and I'm teaching a class in public speaking. And before I started teaching that class, the only way they could take it was online. And I can't imagine taking a public speaking class online, but that's, they had to go out and find places to speak in the community. And so there's something to be said about working with a student and what goes on between a student and a teacher that cannot be replaced in a virtual classroom. But it is good in some ways for classes that you need to graduate or something like that.
Yeah, for both of you, what is the best way to maintain an incentive for good teaching? Is it possible to set up a fair system of merit pay for teachers?
I've never seen merit pay done well. I'd like to see it done well. I'd like to reward the really good teachers. I'd like to give them a little extra in their paycheck for doing well. Merit pay, I've seen it in many years as a public high school teacher, often went to somebody who the principal had a relationship with. It just did not work, and it didn't have the right criteria. And if it has the right criteria, I think it would be good, but I don't know how you set that up. And maybe we could find a place where it does work and see what they're doing and get it to work. I'd like to reward really good teachers.
Do I think there is a fair way? No, I don't. I think one of the problems you see in education, everybody's trying to figure out, this school district right now as a committee trying to figure out how to do it, as every other school district around the state is almost doing it, as every other state almost. If somebody came up with a fair one, we'd all copy it. At least I would expect that we would. So do I think it can be a fair one? No. Do I think it's going to have to be happen at some point? Yes. Will it be fair? No. I'm sure there'll be questions and problems with it, and that's the way we'll have to deal with it. That's the legislature rules to us.
Just a quick follow-up. So, in setting merit pay aside, what kind of a way do you envision making sure that your teachers are good and helping them to get better?
Well, I think that we know who the really successful teachers are, and so the mentor kind of process would probably be one that would work, and also giving teachers extra encouragement and learning in workshops and things like that help. You know, when we know everybody who's teaching wants to be a good teacher. Sometimes they just don't have the wherewithal, and if we supply that for them and encourage them that way, I think we can make better teachers.
I think the only way that can be done, and it was something that they did when the school grades came out, and the individual school got a higher grade, then you could say, okay, that school did better, and you can merit all the teachers in the school and assume that they all had a hand in it, which is most likely the truth, that they all had a hand in it. You can measure that this school got better this year or it got worse, but individuals, no. So I would go and give a merit to a school complete, from the administration down to the support staff, and give a merit pay to that school that improved.
Right now in Florida, students can decide they've had enough education at the age of 16. Should the school board be advocating for a higher age so that people stay in school longer?
No, I don't think so, because it's going to be the decision would not be made by this. It'll come from the legislature. They'll state that this is the age that students can leave school. To me, if that student does not want to be here, then I don't want them in the class. If the student does not want to be here, it would be disruptive to the class. Now, I would not just say, if a student walks into the office today and says, I'm finished, I want out of here, I wouldn't say, okay, fine, goodbye, you're out of here. I would counsel, do everything I could to keep them here. But I don't want to force a student that has no need or no desire to be in the class, because he or she will be disruptive to the rest of the class.
I agree that forcing a student to stay in a situation that they don't want, in a school that they don't want to be in, is really a losing proposition. What I'd like to do is get people to want to stay in school. Create a home at school for that student, whether it's the yearbook class like I used to teach, or the band or art, or in the Key West School they have a police program. Something that the student can buy into, and they want to be there. They're not forced to be there, but they want to be there, and they see the value in that education. And I think that's how we can encourage students to stay and finish, by keeping them engaged in school.
Into our closing statements now. Try to keep it under 10 minutes. 2 minutes. Minute and a half, 2 minutes. You guys have done great. Just a little hint, by keeping your answers concise, we've been able to have a lot more questions and answers. So I think we're right. Good job, and the next people take my name.
I never expected to be in this position of running for school board. I'm not a politician. I may be the world's worst politician. I didn't raise much money, and I'm
Not even close.
not even close, you know. But I have had such a good time meeting so many wonderful people and so many teachers who put up banners for me, you know, they have to take them down, and signs in neighborhoods, and just getting to talk to people. I've enjoyed it, and everything working perfectly. Whether I win or lose, I've enjoyed the process, and I would enjoy being a member of the school board and bringing everything that I love about education and about children to my time on the board. I would love to be able to do that, to make a positive impact on the lives of the children, two of whom are my grandchildren. And so I'd like to make a positive impact on the situation that they are in. I hope that I can get your vote on August 26th, and I appreciate your listening and for this opportunity to speak to all of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Thank everybody for coming to this. This will be the last one that we'll have before the election, so it's good for us. Some of those candidates will still have to go on, but we won't. And thank you for the questions. And I can ask you for my vote, please, because you've seen what I've done. I've been there 8 years. Never been ashamed to take the hard stance and the votes that needed to keep this district afloat and do what's right for the students, the staff, and for the taxpayers. I consider, you know, that was a question that I wanted to get asked, but yeah, we're here for the students, but not at the expense of the staff or the taxpayers. That's what we're here for. We got to have a right balance, and I've done the right balance in the years that I've been on the board. And as I said, I think we're finished with the reactionary, and we're going into the visionary part, and I want to have part of my say in that visionary. So please, again, thank you for your support for me up and down the keys. It's been humbling to me, the amount of support I've gotten. So please thank you, and finish it with your vote, and thank you very much.
Thank you. One of these people will be in the store. If we can get the District 1 people to come on up. While we're doing that, keep an eye on Kim Romano's Facebook page tomorrow. She'll be doing the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Love you, Kim. Okay, quiet down. Here we go. So, this seat is unique. This is the seat, District 1. It's currently held by Robin Smith Martin. Robin decided not to run for re-election, and we really appreciate his service. What that does is it gives us an open seat. And open seats are, most of the time, very highly contested. This one certainly is. We have three great gentlemen up here. Hopefully we'll get to know them a little bit better and see if there's anything that differentiates them. That's what this is all about. So we'll get right to the question. We have Bobby Highsmith, Stuart Kessler, and Warren Lamar. Jenna, you're up. So first question.
All right, this is for all three of you. If elected, what's your top priority?
My top priority if elected is to get our school district and our school board back on track. We have a lot of really great things going on in our district, but unfortunately there's still a culture on the school board that promotes divisiveness, bickering, at the expense of the real mission of the school district, educating our children. I think the board has lost its focus to a certain extent, and I want to get on the school board to change that. I will bring a voice of balance, reason, and vision if elected to the school board, I know we've had some problems in the past. I agree that we've solved a lot of them, and I'm not naive enough to think that we've solved them all. There still is an awful lot of work left to be done, and I want to be the voice that helps champion our school district for our children, for our community, to make this a world-class system that we all deserve. Thank you.
In order to answer that question, understand my answer, you need to understand my view of the world that's different from the other candidates. I'm on the Audit and Finance Committee, and I have seen and reviewed the finances myself. I have gone to the negotiating sessions and seen the negotiations going on. I have gone to the school district to ask to see the HOB financial records, and I found that they weren't there, millions of dollars of records. So when I say things have to be fixed, I know, I'm not just saying it, I have seen this from my own personal experience. It's not an illusion. It really did happen. I will tell you what my Audit and Finance Committee that I'm on, I've been on for 3 years, has said about what the first priority should be. They said we first have to get these nuts and bolts right before we can go on to the higher vision. I would love to talk about the higher vision, but at the Audit Committee sometimes we say we need to get some pieces of paper with numbers on them that we can look at. I'm supposed to have an Audit Committee meeting now, next week, and the budget's about to be passed. Do I have a budget as the chairman of the Audit and Finance Committee yet? I do not. I would like one. It's supposed to be passed next month. I can't even have a meeting. We have to fix the nuts and bolts.
Ladies and gentlemen, we need to achieve successful children. All our children must be successful. One of you raised the question earlier about not seeing diversity in classrooms. And that's one of the reasons why I am running for school board, because our school system, our school board, needs to reflect the diversity of the community to achieve success for all children. And so one of the first things I would like to start with, what I would start with, is understanding why our children are dropping out and engage those children and figure out how to keep them in school so they can become successful individuals.
School board, this is for each of you. School board candidates often say, and we've heard this here tonight, that they favor more vocational training. Can you tell us how you would get an enhanced vocational training program out of the I wish stage? And what percentage of the budget would you be willing to take away from the college-bound curriculum so that the district could fund an enhanced vocational training program?
The question was, I see the gentleman in the back, the president of Florida Keys Community College. Boy, wouldn't it be great if we could partner with them and enhance our vocational education program, take advantage of our wonderful location, have a world-class marine and ecology studies, but that's vision stuff. So we can partner with FKCC to keep the budget impacts down. We could try to share some with them. The answer is that I would take a pretty substantial portion of the instruction, I can't tell you a percentage, because the more you engage the kids in what they want to learn, the better the success of the entire district will be. That's one of the things we need to do, to drop out right now and to move the entire vision. But again, there was a talk about this with Dr. Guevara before. I don't see where it's moved forward in the last several years. We need somebody who's going to actually move the vision forward.
Thanks, sir.
The high school I graduated from back in the 80s in Jamaica offered vocational programs. think in my high school they offered 13 or 14 programs. And what that gave students is not only a diploma when they graduate, but it also gave them that certification that they can use to go on to higher learning, or they can use to go out and get a job. I would strongly support vocational programs within our schools, because we as a community, as a people, we need to do whatever it is, ever it takes, that all our children can achieve success. We all understand that not all our children are college bound. So whatever it takes to keep them engaged, we need to do.
I think it's a great question. I think that we do have to look a little deeper to it. It's not just vocational programs, which I think are great and are in short supply, and we need to do a much better job of those. I think that, as Stuart said, the community college is a great option to explore that. But we live in a very generous community, a very giving community, a very talented community. And to help promote those vocational programs, I think that we need to do a much better job of getting out into that community, getting the folks that are the entrepreneurs, the restaurateurs, the hoteliers, the fishermen, the boat mechanics, get them engaged with our system and see if we can't get more volunteerism within our schools to help enhance our vocational side without impacting the budget. The bottom line, however, is we really need to make sure that we focus on truly educating all of our children, whether they're going on to college or not. Every single one of our children deserves a rigorous education. They should not be sitting in a classroom killing time. They should not be leaving when they're 16, going out into the workforce, because that 16-year-old that doesn't complete high school really doesn't have much of a chance. And all of us are going to be paying for that down the road. So we really need to focus and touch each of those kids and provide a program, provide an education that is going to be meaningful to them, but is also going to be useful to them and useful to our society. And I think that's the most important job of our school system, and I think that's the most important job of the school board, is to find the leadership to push us in that direction. Thank you.
Warren first, okay. And then it's for everybody. For the past 5 years, I've sat on the student service team, better known as the truancy team at Key West High School. As we know from statistics, when someone becomes truant, in, I'd say a half a year, misses 10 days without excuse, their chances of graduating diminishes by half. In Key West High School alone, by the last quarter of the year, at least 20% of every class is legally truant over the year. What do you see as a role of the school board of addressing the truancy issue, so not only we have the best school available, but we have all of our students in school?
We have to understand why our children are not going to school. To create a successful child, we need 5 components, in my opinion. We need a child to be engaged. We need a teacher that has the supplies that he or she needs. We need a school board that sets the policies and procedures that ensure teacher accountability. We need a curriculum that a child can feel good about being involved in, and that is a career that will set them on a career path that will make them successful. And fifth, we need you, the community, to hold the school board responsible, to hold the school board and the superintendent accountable for our children. Okay, you spend good tax dollars. Right now, I understood getting into this race. Monroe County gets more money than all the other counties per child. Yet your good tax dollars are turning out mediocre children. And that is sad.
Truancy is a problem. One thing I do know is who isn't truant. The football players at Key West High School aren't truant. The baseball players at Key West High aren't truant. The members of the band aren't generally truant. Kids in the choir aren't truant. Kids involved in the AV clubs aren't truant. Kids will stay in school. Kids will come to class if they want to be there. And we have to give them reasons to want to be there. Whether it's through the Take Stock in Children program, where one-on-one mentoring is provided to individual students that are identified early as possibly at risk. That program is widely successful. We need to, again, get our community involved in our schools. There's been too much tarnish and too much bad press about everything that's going wrong. I believe if we can get this community to believe in our school system again, that we can really draw on the strengths that we have here in the Florida Keys. Again, kids that are engaged, kids that are involved, those are the ones that are going to show up. Those are the ones that are going to be in class every day. You need to find ways to tap into all of the kids and make sure that all of them have something that brings them to school every day. Thank you.
Randy, that was a very interesting point, and I hope you're prepared, now that you've revealed this to the press, that you're going to be the cause of divisiveness and negative press. Now, are you the problem because you told about it? Or is the fact that you told about it the part of the solution? That is actually what we're talking about tonight. You have to understand how these boards operate if you've ever been on them. The administration controls the information and the flow of information. They tell the school board what they want them to hear. You have to have a healthy skepticism about what you hear. And then we can start dealing with these kinds of problems and issues when they arise and come up with solutions. I don't have the solution on top of my head, but it's not even a problem yet until Randy made it one, if you know what I'm saying. I've been degraded as shooting the messenger when we try to bring up the problems on, the audit committee becomes the bad guy. We're actually, I look at it as we're the good guy because we're looking for the solution.
Campaign contributions usually give a pretty good indication of where a candidate is coming from and where they're going. I'll give you each one of you a shot at this, starting with Mr. Heisman. What does your opponent's campaign contribution list say about him?
Wow. I've tried very hard to run a clean, positive, upbeat campaign. Again, I think we already have too much negativity and divisiveness. I'm very proud of the over 90 people that have contributed substantially to my campaign. They're attorneys, accountants, financial professionals, teachers, school administrators, entrepreneurs, business people, up and down the Keys. And if you look at my campaign finance reports, you will see it's a who's who of Key West notables and people's up and down the Keys, but there's also a lot of names that you wouldn't recognize because they're just simple folks that work hard and believe in me. And I'm very humbled and honored by that. If you look at the campaign financial reports, though, you'll see that nearly half of my opponent, Stu Pesser's campaign, has been funded by Captain Ed, his partner, his business. I leave it to you to judge whether or not it's appropriate for a sitting school board member to be that involved in another race. And I leave it to you to decide whether or not it's appropriate for someone seeking to be elected to the school board to take that kind of money and what promises might have been made regarding votes and positions going forward. Thank you.
Well, you learn something about politics. I mean, obviously I'm out there and you heard as the reformer, and that is not the kind of message that attracts the business interests who have vested interest in this business with the school district to contribute to me, because I stand for open bidding, transparency, everybody gets a fair chance, no retaliation. The people, moneyed interests don't necessarily support that. I'm very proud that Captain Ed supports my independence and has made it possible for a candidate like me, a reformer, to actually have a chance to get a message in this big county. It's expensive to do it. And I run a minimally expensive campaign. Again, I don't attract money because of the message. And I hope you appreciate that. Thank you.
At 6:30 this morning, when I was writing a menu for a bride, my business for a wedding this weekend, I got a phone call saying you need to read the front page of this morning's paper. And after I read the first 2 paragraphs, I said, no, I don't care to see this. Because I've never looked at any of the campaign contributions. My wife does all that. Now, I have had, in my campaign, I have had 90% of the money that I raised from folks calling me up and saying, hey, I've got a contribution for you. I have had folks, right now there's a check on my desk that I cannot take because I believe that that individual, should I be elected to the school board, that individual has done business with the school system. And I would not want his contribution swaying my judgment. So, when needed, in my campaign, if something is needed, I take the money from my pocket and I pay for it. Because I do not want my vote to be bought.
There's a lot of talk about the negative effects that come from standardized testing. With that being said, what can specifically be done about it?
Do you have a specific negative effect you want me to address, or just the general negative effect? It's an open question. Well, what are the negative effects of standardized tests? Number one is it takes a lot of time out of the classroom. It can put an undue amount of pressure and high stakes on people that's unnecessary. So I think some of the things that can be done in negative effects, those negative effects, is to not make them high stakes. I think that the information that we're gathering from some of these exams is very, very useful and diagnostic. It can help us do a better job. But we don't need to do so many of them. And we have to be more careful about the quality of the tests that we give so that we efficiently use the classroom time. A question I had last night was, how much money is it costing? It's an enormous amount of money when you consider the staff time on top of the cost. But your teacher takes that out of their day. That's a lost educational day. However, it's got to be balanced. We can't operate in the blind. We have to know where we've gone and where we've been, but we have to use the data the right way. We can't use it for merit pay for teachers, like I talk about that stuff. We can't use it to create pressure by making it too high stakes.
Students have to be tested to give a gauge of where they are. Standardized testing, different kids learn different ways, and I believe instead of what I found out recently is that 8.5 days, every 8.5 days a child is tested in our school system. I haven't been able to substantiate that fact, that's the statement yet, but if so, that's a little bit much. I mean, that's taking away from teaching the child what they need to know to become successful. Yes, I do believe in testing, but standardized testing, such frequent intervals, I can't agree with that.
I
think the biggest problem with the testing regime that we're subject to right now is we place way too much importance on it. Those standardized tests that we're talking about, those are, the results on those tests are the grades that we get for our schools. Those grades that we get, those district rankings, those are all based on the results that our students do in the standardized testing regime. And they test reading and mathematics. I think that's a very incomplete picture as to what type of education we're providing for our students. And I think if we can agree that it doesn't matter if we're ranked 8th in the state on a multiple choice test, or 23rd in the state, or 5th. I want to be known as the best at everything. But I think to get there, we have to really take a step back and expand our focus on providing a true, broad-based education to all of our children. And I think to get there, the first thing that we need to do is de-emphasize the importance of standardized testing. Standardized testing is important, it does have a role, but I think it should be used primarily as a diagnostic tool so that teachers and students can sit down with parents and say, this is where your child was last year, this is the progress that they made. My children have taken FCATs the past couple of years, they've done fine. There hasn't been any real meaningful dialogue. What you hear about FCAT scores is, oh my gosh, another school got a C, this school got a D. And it's become really a political football, and it's become a weapon against our school system. And so I really think that to break that chain, we need to get away from the emphasis on standardized testing. Thank you.
My kids have been in the school system for about 10 years, and they love so many of their teachers, but they do also speak of teachers that they don't feel are teaching them anything. So what should be done about teachers who are not performing well? What's being done now, if any of you know, and how, what should be done? How should that be handled?
Teachers, like in any other profession, needs training, but I hate to do this, and I'm going to do it. In my business, if my cook is not doing right, I'll fire him. He's gone. But teachers do need training. So if a teacher is not performing, and your children, my daughter comes home and tells me, I see her work, that she's not getting the information she needs to become successful, I will have a conversation with that teacher and or the head of school, and something needs to be done. The other thing is we should not only leave the entire success of our children solely on our teachers. As parents, we too have to be involved in our child's education. So yeah, I would definitely have a talk with the teacher. If I don't believe he or she's doing a good job, then if nothing is done, then I will work to the head of school.
My first answer to that is I would make sure that you go and talk to the teacher, because I know from personal experience my daughter has complained about a teacher not being very good or effective, and I go in and find out that that teacher is hard, and that teacher is pushing her harder than she wants to be pushed. And I slap that teacher on the back and say, thank you, you're doing the job that I need you to be doing. So I don't know that I'd always think our kids talk about a poor teacher at face value. I'm a lawyer. I went to 4 years of college and then 3 years of law school, and then was admitted, passed a comprehensive exam, and was turned loose to practice law. I had much more sense than to go out and try to practice law on my own based on that 7-year extensive education. I had the good fortune of finding a good law firm that had mentorship programs and practitioners who could teach me the real nuts and bolts of how to be a lawyer. Our teachers, on the other hand, graduate from a 4-year college with an education degree. They walk into a school and they are said, room 104, start teaching. We need to do a much better job of providing professional development for our teachers, mentoring, and that can be done relatively inexpensively if we draw on the talents that we do have, because we do have a lot of great experienced teachers in the district. But if we promote this camaraderie and this spirit of cooperation among our teachers, I think that we can do a much better job of making sure that all of them do the great job that we need. Thank you.
Boy, what a great question, a complex question. You know, about 20 years ago, and I was on a former school board up in suburban Philadelphia, and we wanted to tackle some of this question, and we partnered with the Wharton School of Econometrics. We got Anita Summers, who is the mother of Larry Summers, who used to be Treasury Secretary. She worked with us. Anyway, we did a whole study. And make the long story short, we measured teacher performance. And you know what we found? That the teachers who the kids were complaining about scored the highest in the objective evaluations. And those teachers who the principals scored real high, it gave them great subjective evaluations. What turned out? They weren't the high performers. It was because they were popular. Very, very scary to evaluate teachers. We learned a very important lesson about the evaluation of teachers. Likability isn't necessarily consistent with their performance. However, there are bad teachers and there are good teachers like any other profession. But teaching is an art. And that's why we also have to be careful about mandating methods, too many methods of classroom teaching, so that each teacher can perform in the way that suits them and their students best. And a while ago in our school district, we were mandating methodologies, which was part of the reason that some of the scores went down.
You know, we often hear from candidates,
these are 30-second answers,
when they want either money or votes. And then we don't hear from them again until the next election cycle. What are your plans to communicate with the public? How do you intend to listen to the concern of the citizens?
30 seconds, stay seated.
Well, I'm pretty darn excited about the possibility of being on the school board. I have 2 kids in the system. I think they're doing good things. I think the programs at Key West High are great. But my single most exciting thing about being on the school board is I want to be a champion for our school district. I want to be a champion for our students. I want to get our community involved. And I can't do that sitting behind my desk. I plan to get out in the community. I plan to shake hands up and down the keys. I'm very well connected. And I want to talk with everyone in this community and get them excited about our system to get them involved. Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm already doing it. I'm the chair of the audit committee. I was on the strategic planning committee. I'm out in the community already, even though I'm not elected to the board. I've been appointed to lots of other subcommittees by the board to evaluate things. I'm in the schools. I have a wife who's a teacher in the schools who tells me every night what's going on. And I have three Key West high school graduate children also who told me what's going on. So I'm already out there. I've already started.
I have been in the school system since my children were going to school. I have not been involved on a day-to-day basis. I sat on the Montessori School Board for 3 years, and since then I've been intimately involved with those schools. My wife and I have a scholarship at Montessori Charter Children's School, so I'm constantly in contact with parents and teachers of the school system.
Okay, I think we need to wrap it up. Let's have our closing statement. You'll start, Warren and Bob. Minute and a half, 2 minutes. My phone's almost up there.
I'll try to keep it quick, Todd. Listen, either you believe that we're headed in the right direction, I think we're not. My information comes from real work. I put in 1,000 hours of volunteer work on the school district. I have, like I said before, I have been chair of the audit committee. I've been for 3 years. People elected me the chair of this committee of business people across the Keys. I have seen actual information, not feelings. If you believe me, I also have the experience and knowledge from both a law degree, an MBA, and an accounting degree, and 16 years on a prior school board, including 11 years, which those people elected me their chair, and the election, the people elected me 5 times to office. If you believe me, then I would ask for your support, and we together can put this district where it, and do what we need to do for the kids and move forward. If you believe that we're on the right track, well, I'm telling you that we're not based on actual knowledge. And I believe we have to make a change in a different direction. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support.
This is almost an unfair fight. I'm sitting with 2 gentlemen who have law degrees. They make laws. I'm a chef. I create. You give me water, I give you soup. Ladies and gentlemen, what I want is success. Ladies, and the only way to achieve success is to have an engaged child. We have to engage them. We have seen in recent years, and actually recent, the letter grades coming out, a family said to me, Warren, our children have failed. The children, I said, no, we have failed our children. You, ladies and gentlemen, I said this before, pay good money to educate our children. And that's the main responsibility of the school board, to oversee the success of our children, and they have failed. That's what I want for my child to be successful, and that's what I want her friends, your children, your staff children, your grandchildren, is to be successful. I want you to vote for me. I have no hidden agendas, and like I said before, I am beholden to one person, the children.
Thank you folks for sticking around. Glad that the mosquito folks aren't going tonight, because usually we'd have to go last after them as well. And I think that's a little unfortunate, because the school board races, I think, are the most important races in our community. The future of our town, the future of our state, the future of our nation depends on the quality of our public education. I do believe in our system. I'm a product of our system. I was valedictorian of Key West High School. Was fortunate enough to go to Duke University on a football scholarship, graduated with honors with a degree in economics, graduated from the University of Florida Law School. My parents were career educators. They came down here in 1966 as school teachers. They got into school administration, and so education has always been a family tradition for me. I mentioned earlier the main reasons that I got involved in this race are my 2 kids. My daughter started Key West High School today. The time has flown by. I can't believe that's actually happened. And my son is a 4th grader at Poinciana Elementary. I have a great life. I have great kids. I have a great career. I'm getting involved in this race because I believe it's important. I have no hidden agendas. I have no axes to grind. I want only what's the very best for my children, for your children, for our community. I'll never sell my vote to special interests or to another school board member. I will always be independent, and I always vote my conscience to do the very best for our children and our community. So I ask you to please vote Bobby Heisman for School Board District 1, August 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Well, as we mentioned, unless one of these gentlemen can get 50% plus 1 vote, you're probably going to see 2 of them up here again. So thank you for our panelists, thank you for the candidates, and thank you all of you.